Hello, hello. Welcome back, Tech Freire, and our amazing guest, my new friend, Jonathan Shahar, the CEO of CBS Food Program. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, Jonathan, tell us, what is CBS Food Program? What are you guys doing there, and what do you do as a CEO?
Absolutely. So, CBS Food Program is a nonprofit organization focused on combating childhood food insecurity in the greater Philadelphia area. We do so by providing meals, breakfast, lunch, snack, supper to children at daycare schools, after school programs, summer camps, and other nonprofits where there are kids engaging in activities that might otherwise need meals. In my role as CEO, mostly just a lot of oversight and a lot of strategy and a lot of vision. I like to say that I am the chief storytelling officer for the organization, making sure that we're realizing the values of CBS Food Program, making sure that we're finding new partners, finding new opportunities. The unfortunate reality is the need for hunger relief is persistent and sometimes even expanding. And we want to be able to make sure that we can meet those needs, make sure that we can provide high quality, healthy meals that, kids will like. So
That's
I
right.
just oversee a team of 35 to make sure that that can happen.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for your team, your team of 35 plus you, the ringleader, the storyteller. But I know that there's something special about CBS Food Program. Tell us a little bit, like the unique thing that you guys do with the types of foods that you serve, and also give us a big number. Like, how many kids are you guys serving? How many people are you reaching?
So CBS Food Program feeds approximately 5,000 kids every single day at 205 different center locations in Philadelphia, Bucks, Montgomery, and Delaware County. Last year, so we run a series of federally and state funded programs. One of them is the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And last year, we were the number one provider of CACFP program meals in the whole state of Pennsylvania. For 24-25, we served about 2.1 million meals at all of our different center locations to all the different kids that we serve. We also
That is
kind of,
amazing. Go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead, John.
it's just a little bit of a niche thing. All of the meals that we provide are 100% kosher. And we also have an imam on our board to help meet the halal dietary restriction stuff, because we really want to, be attentive and focused in on our community's actual needs. So anybody with any need can get the meals that they deserve.
And that is the special, unique thing I wanted to make sure that the lead storyteller was going to share. So again, thank you so much for the impact that you are making there, right there in Greater Philadelphia. All right, so we want to get to know you a little bit more, Jonathan, on the personal level. Where did you grow up? And it sounds like you're currently based in Philadelphia, but tell us a little bit about your upbringing, where you spent time as a child.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, son of a Philadelphia public school teacher, and my dad was in construction and a little bit of retail. So I grew up in the Northeast until I was in seventh, eighth grade, and then moved out to Lower Moreland in Huntington Valley just for middle school and high school, the end of middle school and high school. Since then, went to Penn State for undergrad, got a business degree, and then moved right back to Philadelphia. I've been here just about my entire life. Went to law school at Temple, practiced at a firm in Philadelphia, clerked for a judge in Philadelphia, and now run an organization that, is focused on the Philadelphia community writ large. I'm a Philly
You
guy through
are
and through.
That's right. I was just gonna say that. You are Philly, born and raised and still there, so that's amazing. Now you mentioned that you grew up with a mom who's a teacher and your dad in construction. We'd like to know a little bit more about you during middle school and high school years. Tell us what kept you busy. What were you doing?
Absolutely. So big sports person, played some soccer, ran some track. In my high school years, focused on track more than soccer, but very much enjoyed being in the competitive space in a place that's both kind of team oriented, but also a little bit of individual capacity in the track space. Did a bunch of various volunteer opportunities with our mini-thon, with some food delivery systems here in the Northeast. I was in a play once. I was in seventh grade, and they told me I shouldn't sing and that I should stand at the back. And so I never did theater again. And I was vice president of my class in high school. And yeah, those were kind of my main activities.
So it sounds like you stayed busy, whether it was academically, serving as, in leadership positions and doing a lot of sports. Sounds like you had to be a little bit disciplined and you were doing a lot of multidisciplinary things, right? So how does that relate to what you're doing now as a CEO of a nonprofit?
Currently in my role, I wear a ton of hats. Being a nonprofit, we don't have the dollars and cents that a lot of our for-profit counterparts have. So everything from marketing and social media to HR to accounting to legal and regulatory compliance to logistics, everything that the organization touches eventually comes on my desk at some point. So having that multi-interest, having the practice with kind of discipline across multiple different things informs the ability to be able to prioritize, to pick. And then also I'm just a person who likes a lot of stuff. So it helps that from a day to day, I kind of get to wear a lot of these different hats.
Speaking of the different hats, and before we move on to having our students interview you, I know from your background that you mentioned it, that you were an attorney for, for a few years there, and then now you're leading a nonprofit. Tell us quickly, like, how did that pivot happen? How did you go from, hey, I'm gonna, take care of clients legally, and now I'm taking care of people and feeding their bellies?
So the most amazing part about law school and the legal profession is it's a language unto itself. Law school teaches you how to think and process information and speak and communicate in a particular way and fashion. And that lends itself a lot to sort of structure and strategy and figuring out the nuance of a problem, breaking it down to highly specific components. So as a lawyer, I was brought onto a handful of different nonprofit boards, CBS Food Program included, just to kind of provide that language to the board to help guide an organization. And that back in late 2024, CBS Food Program was going through a little bit of a restructure and reorg. And as a board member, you have a responsibility to lead and provide strategic oversight. And as the reorg and restructure was taking place, I ended up spending more and more and more time involved in the day to day. And part of the restructure and reorg was we needed to go find a new executive director, CEO. And when it came time to do that, the rest of the board kind of turned to me and said, "Hey, Jonathan, in this time you've been volunteering and doing a lot in a volunteer capacity. How about coming on full time to do this?" As much as I loved my legal practice, the ability to kind of take some of those skills, take some of the multi-interest that I have and apply it to this was too good to say no to.
That is amazing and so inspiring. I can definitely relate to some of that. But again, thank you for what you're doing. And it sounds like that you were in the right time, the right place, and you were ready. So I hope our students get to hear that you can take these sharp pivots in your career, but you just got to be ready and be able to say yes. With that, let's go over to Charles, our first student. What's your first question for Jonathan?
My first question is, how do you balance running the day to day logistics of preparing and delivering those with long term strategy goals?
That's a remarkable question and one that I toil and toggle with every single day. I do my best just from a tactical perspective to run brain dumps where I'll write down absolutely everything that's on my plate, everything that needs to get done, and then really take a look at it. I know that this kind of out of left field here, but President Eisenhower had his Eisenhower grid of urgent and important, and you kind of place it whether it's urgent or important, whether it's not urgent, where it falls in sort of those quadrants. I try loosely to apply that to kind of everything that I'm doing. And then in terms of the short term, my people are my most important asset. None of this gets done without them, being able to accomplish their work. So to the extent that what I can do can help elevate them and support the work they do, that tends to be my top priority. But it's a balancing act and it's a tough game every single day.
Tough game, balancing act, people first, and those priorities. I love hearing that. Let's go to Jemiah. What's your first question?
My first question is like, how do you track your impact of your programs? Like, how can you ensure that your program will be running for years after this?
That's a great question, Jemiah. Thank you. In terms of tracking our impact, there's sort of the twofold. In the backwards looking, we're tracking every single meal that gets prepared and delivered, so we know exactly how many meals are going out. In order to comply with a lot of our regulators and grants, every meal that gets served needs to be counted. We have a software platform that does that for us, that works with all of our different center partners. So in real time, we can see who's eating, how many kids are eating, what they're eating. And then there's sort of a qualitative component of, what did the kids like? What did they not like? We use a lot of those metrics for our backwards looking impact. And then sort of the forward looking of making sure that it continues to run. We pay a lot of attention to the goings on at the federal and state level, especially as it relates to child nutrition, to food programs, to SNAP benefits, to a variety of these different programs at the federal and state levels that impact our ability to operate. We have conversation with representatives at increasing regularity given the climate, but just making sure that we are attuned to everything that is going on so we can adjust and adapt accordingly.
That's awesome. I love that you emphasize that it's not just the numbers, the quantitative metrics to reflect the impact, but also how important the qualitative is, just to hear what's happening and just to be able to make adjustments as needed. And that all requires words and not just, total numbers. Hope, let's go to you. What's your first question?
What goals are you focused on right now?
Right now, our big goal is quality and diversity in meals. So prior to my joining and in the first couple of months, we went out and did a little bit of a survey of everybody that we're serving. And we're like, hey, what do you like? What do you not like? And what we kind of got back was, we understand you're feeding a lot of kids. It feels like you're feeding a lot of kids. We would prefer to have a little bit more of different options, increased quality. And so since joining, it's been very much focused on having a diverse menu that meets all of the different community needs that we serve. Every different culture, ethnicity, background has different food habits. And so trying to be able to really respond to those and making sure that the food product that we're providing, that we're making sure our dollars go as far as possible, because high quality food is just better than not high quality food.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that's so important. It's not just a preference, it's culture. It's the requirements. And so I love that you guys are even taking that into consideration. Let's go back to Charles. What's your next question?
My next question is, what skills do you think are most essential for someone who wants to start a nonprofit that combats food insecurity in their own community?
I would say the ability to hone in specifically on the problem you are trying to solve. Food insecurity itself is massive. The reason and rationale and how we got here is complex and convoluted, and the ways to solve it have so many different avenues if you're starting anew, honing in on a specific component, whether it's, the service providing like we do, delivering that meal, or aggregating in terms of, being a food bank, or advocating, really working with legislators and the community writ large to provide additional resources. There are so many different facets to support the hunger relief efforts. And if I were starting anew, I would find like, what's my one? What's the thing that I can do really well and focus on that?
That's so helpful, Jonathan, especially you are describing what's adjacent to passion, right? Like you're going to be passionate about something that you want to solve, but let's get, pinpoint exactly what it is that you can help with at that moment. That's a great question too, Charles. Let's go back to Jemiah. What's your next question?
My next question is, how does your role differ as a CEO of a nonprofit rather than somebody who's more focused on making money? The CEOs that we had interviewed before this, there were a lot of components that went into their job. And, a lot of their workers were essentially motivated on, making money. Also the design, but, money is a core aspect of a lot of different jobs and positions. How can you ensure that your role is different? And how can you ensure that your workers stay motivated as they work in your nonprofit?
How is nonprofit executive different than a for-profit space? Primarily mission driven, right? People don't come to work for nonprofits for the dollars and cents. We pay well. We have a, internal minimum wage of $16 because we want to ensure quality employment for our employees. People come to work for nonprofits because they believe in what the nonprofit is aiming towards, what the goal is. The ability to tell the story and articulate the mission is going to drive why people join. That being said, in my role as CEO, there is a lot of overlap to the for-profit space, right? Just because we're not profits doesn't mean the dollars and cents don't matter. Being able to increase our revenues, being able to bring in more dollars just translates into a bigger and broader impact. So there is a good chunk of my day that is geared towards how do we increase revenue? How do we cut costs? Where can we cut costs without impacting the mission and the work that we're doing? It has that extra component of mission, but there is a lot of overlap in terms of focusing on the dollars and cents, because that's how things ultimately get done.
So good. Jemiah, that was such a great question. It's obviously personal to me, but it is so true. And I would agree with that, Jonathan. People, when you work for a nonprofit, know what you're going into. You're not going in without a mission that matters to you, first of all, but also like there is an adjustment. So thank you for that great explanation. Very articulate. Let's go to Hope. Your next question.
How do you plan to increase awareness about childhood food insecurity?
That's a great question. I wish I had a better answer for you writ large. What I can speak to is on our path, our plan is to just continuously improve the product that we provide to the centers that we work with, our center partners. Because if we can do what we do well and do it over and over and over again, the message gets out. People are able to find things that are good and competent and supportive. People don't like things that are not good, competent, and supportive. So I'm a very much focus inwards before going outwards. If we can meet our objectives of quality and consistency and community, really honing in on those values, going out and telling the story about how we're doing that, right? Whether that's on socials or through word of mouth. But first and foremost, it's really meeting our moment. Because if you do it and you do it well, if you build it, they will come.
Let's invite Vanessa. Vanessa, do you have a question for John?
Yeah, this kind of ties into what you were just speaking about with hope, but can you speak to storytelling a little bit? Like, is that something that just comes naturally, or is that something you can work on? And also, how has that served you in the legal profession as well as your leadership profession now?
So I think storytelling is something that can be learned. I think I happen to be born with a little dispensation. You can ask my parents. I was always a storyteller. They always were like, "What are you talking about, Jonathan? That doesn't sound right at all." But honing that skill is, I think, the most human. Right? As people from the time of campfires and hunting and gathering, we were oral tradition and telling stories, and story narrative arcs are ingrained with us. People listen to stories and follow stories and are moved by stories. I can tell you 5,000 kids and 2.1 million meals and these facts and statistics, but the story is what drives and what moves. And in terms of the legal profession, when wanting to be, a trial lawyer, and a trial in and of itself is a story of a case. And so I spent a lot of time working on how to develop a theory of a case and how to build out a story that is memorable and persuasive, and taking that skill set and applying it to a mission right now that means a lot to me makes it easier, right? Because I can think about the mission and what's important and where the ethos comes from, and then build in the theme, build in the narrative, build in those check marks in telling the story that I hope is persuasive for others to join the cause, to understand the importance of the work that we're doing.
Jonathan, first of all, Vanessa, great question. Jonathan, thank you for sharing that. If you can give our listeners and our students today a pro tip on how to tell a good story, like what are the things that you gravitate to first?
In telling a good story,
Yes.
theme is important, right? I mean, I remember in my middle school and high school days, every time we had to do book reports or talk about a story, every teacher was always like, "What's the theme?" And I was like, "This doesn't make any." Is important. Like, what is the through line about everything that you're saying, and then how do you tie all of those pieces back? Also, focus. Right? I'm sure you have friends that they'll tell you a story about what they did on the weekend or whatever, and it just kind of goes on, and you're like, "Okay, what?" Having that through line and being able to tie, I like to say 3 things. You'd like to use 3 as my good number. People remember 3 very well. So if you're like, here's the things we do, here's our core values, right? Quality, community, consistency. We provide excellent, dependable, and delicious meals. To that power of 3, people remember 3. So I like to use 3, and I really like themes are important. Why does it matter? Why is the story that you're telling matter? That's your theme. Connect
That's
everything to
awesome.
that.
Also, Jonathan, playing on storytelling and the theme. So it sounds like you start off with a theme, you've got to stay focused. How does that apply to us personally, right? Because I know that CBS program, you guys are starting to expand and hire. But for our students that are like, hey, at some point I'm going to be applying for jobs and going for interviews, can you share a little bit how storytelling about yourself can relate to having a successful conversation and interview?
Absolutely. So in the same way that, like I said earlier, we've been telling as human stories to each other over and over and over again through all of time, to the extent that you're telling a story about yourself using the theme that you've created. There's this concept of a narrative self. So it's the story that we've developed about ourselves that we want to project out, to the extent that in an interview, in conversations, in interactions, you're like, this is the story that I want to tell about myself, the person that I want to be. And my recommendation would to root it in, values and passions rather than, accomplishments and credentials. It's, I went to law school. I have my JD. I am a lawyer. When I tell the story of who I am, it rarely has to do with the fact that I'm a lawyer. And I try to root it in the, passion for community service and trying to, solve big problems and work with people. When you're going out for these interviews, when you're, talking to college recruiters or to jobs, think about the story that you want to tell, root that theme in some of the values and passions that you have. And it doesn't, that story can change person to person. Maybe you're going for an accounting role that requires a lot of, discipline and attention to detail, and, is sort of a little more solitary in terms of the role, you can talk about, the theme of, inner discipline and, focus and attention to detail and all of these things. And yeah, I'm going to keep it concise, build a theme that matches your values and your passions, and then again, connect the credentials after the fact.
That's so helpful. I had to emphasize that because you are the lead storyteller there. All right, let's go back to Charles. Charles, and for our listeners, and I know your fellow students there know this about you. Charles actually invited our guest, Jonathan, and how full circle it is that we are continuing to encourage and let our students know that this is what networking looks like. This is what it looks like when you're confident enough to communicate with professionals and adults and grown-ups out there, right? So Charles asked if we could interview Jonathan, and our team here at Access Co-Leader said, absolutely, let's do it. And you've been such a great guest. So, Charles, first of all, thank you to you for making the connection and sharing the invite with Jonathan. Charles, share a little bit. You asked about what somebody can do to help their own community. Tell us a little bit about that. Why is that important to you, or what do you have planned after your senior year in high school?
Well, after senior year, I plan on going to college and after that law school. So I kind of found Jonathan, interesting because he transitioned from law to like being like his own boss, like his CEO of a food company that's community driven. I'm kind of like big on community. Like one day I want to open up like a center where kids can come be themselves, like just come vent, feel like we have support or like peers that's like minded. So yeah, that kind of like sparked my attention because like he's doing something that he's doing the Lord's work basically. He's trying to help kids that come from like nothing basically and help them just eat, get a meal, something a lot of kids can't do, people in general can't do. So it's very honorable.
Okay, let me wipe. Seriously, a tear coming down. Like, it's really tugging at my heart, Charles. Come on now. Jonathan, how does that make you feel that just living your life and the decisions you have made is making an impact on this next generation?
It's exciting. Like I'm already ready to figure out where Charles ends up in, and the rest of you end up in 5-10 years from now, because just having that inner confidence to be able to reach out and say, hey, do you want to do this? Or this is kind of what drives me, or any of that. Like you're already facing the right direction. And where that roads end up, who knows? The unknown is kind of scary sometimes, but also kind of fun. But just having that correct view of, these are the things that drive me and I'm going to confidently go after them. Like I'm excited to see where maybe you'll be my boss in 10-15 years from now.
Let's go. All right, Jonathan, what pro tip or what encouragement, wisdom could you share with Charles for somebody who's graduating high school, wanting, immediately wanting to start undergrad and going to law school? What could you tell him?
Keep doing what you're doing with respect to just reaching out to people. I can tell you that all of us still have our, inner high school graduate, our inner college student. That person of every professional still exists. And we remember what it was like to be in those moments, and to reach out and say, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. That will connect right down to that high school student, that college student, that law student within everybody. Meet as many people as you can. The world is incredibly interesting, incredibly complex. Everybody has an entire universe within them, and try to remember as much of those things as you can and make the connections, right? Everybody's kind of in their own little world, in their own little universe, but we all want to be community. We all want to be connected. We all want to feel a part of something. And to the extent that you can help facilitate that, any of you can help facilitate that for anybody, that skill is invaluable, and people will remember, and that goodness will come back 10 and 100-fold.
That's right. That's right. Charles, do you have another question for Jonathan while we have you?
Yes, I had another question. So how do you see federal programs like SNAP influencing your nonprofits work?
So our reimbursements don't come from SNAP specifically, but 70% of the students that we serve are SNAP recipients. We back to the connecting all peoples and remembering. So a friend of mine that worked at the first job that I had now works in Harrisburg in legislative affairs and does a lot of the SNAP and Medicaid related work. And so when everything was kind of getting confusing, I reached out to them and we're like, hey, what resources can I provide? I don't do the SNAP enrollments. I don't have a full understanding of how it works, but what can I do? What can I provide? What we do know is it's going to be a little bit more complicated, and may result in people being booted off of SNAP, and that is not good for us because a SNAP is an auto access to the food that we have. If you're a SNAP recipient, you get the meals, no questions. All we need is the SNAP number. In terms of CACFP, NSLP, and SFSP, which are the three main programs that we do run, they've been around since the 70s. Right now, nobody is under the impression that they're going away. We continue to monitor it. So from the SNAP perspective, we try to be a resource and try to connect those to ensure that they remain on SNAP if they need it. For the programs that we run, we continue to just have the conversation of here's the important work that we're doing, here's why it matters, here's why it should stay around, and tentatively do not believe that it's going anywhere anytime soon.
So helpful. Thank you for sharing that information, Jonathan. Let's go to Jemiah. Jemiah, what's your next question for Jonathan?
My next question is, what skills have you gathered like over your lifetime that you use to help with your program that if you didn't take that path in life, you wouldn't have?
I think there's probably two or three that are going to come to mind. The first is sort of time management. I was always a kid and then a college student and a law student who just wanted to do all of the things. I wanted to, be an academic and learn and study, and I wanted to hang out with my friends and, socialize, and I wanted to be in student government and do sports and do this and do the other thing. And, there were times when I was not as good at doing all of those things and had to learn through time how to, proportion my time based on my priorities. So time management, one. And then the second, going to law school, becoming a lawyer, learning that language, learning that way of thinking is hugely important for being a lawyer and practicing, and is also a remarkably translatable skill. It is a whole different way of, approaching a question, breaking down a problem into component parts, and addressing, each different piece, thinking about things in kind of a little bit of a different way than I think a typical, I'm going to say typical, but there isn't really a typical, nonprofit executive. Everybody comes to it with their own skill sets, but having that legal background really, really just changed the way that I approach problems and answer questions. And yeah.
Jonathan, that's so helpful. I've heard that if you are good at math and if you're interested in engineering, you can make a really great attorney. And I think that you just described it so well because of all the different components that goes into the mind of an attorney. Jemiah, that was such a great question. I know that you are a bit of a creative and you like reading and writing. It's your senior year. Can you share with Jonathan a little bit about what you plan to do after your senior year?
So my plan is to go to Temple. I want to major in civil engineering. My first year, I plan to spend at home, with family, going through the culture shock of college. And then eventually I want to go abroad and, like you said, meet other people, explore, gain skills I've never had before. At the moment, I'm trying to learn Spanish. So that's a new skill I'm trying to unlock. But that's the plan. Hopefully it goes well.
That's a great plan. I know that, when I went to Temple Law, they have an abroad program through the law school, and I got to spend a while in Italy, and that was wonderful. So to the extent that maybe those opportunities are available to you at Temple, definitely take advantage. And if you're trying to learn Spanish, the best way to learn a language is immersion. So if you could, hop over to, Mexico or Spain or, any of the other Spanish speaking countries around the world and spend some time there, probably a good way to learn Spanish, but that's really cool.
Jemiah, talk to us a little bit about what kind of engineering you're most interested in. And do you have you met other engineers, through our program or just in real life? Tell us a little bit how you decided that track.
So I went on an experience trip in the summer. I got to go to three different companies. So I went to Gilbane, O'Donnell Nacarado, and another architecture company. I can't remember right now. And I got to meet them, spend a day in their world, go through different construction sites. And it made me really realize like I love building, I love planning, I love all the aspects that go into this. You meet a lot of people from different companies, from, different fields, and being able to experience what they go through and realize that we're all connecting parts into one big project. That was like really eye opening. And I was like, that's something I could see myself doing. So it was really cool to meet them. They're really good companies. And I just realized I was like, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be in life. Civil engineering most interests me at the current moment. So like, building buildings, being the aspect on, how these buildings get built, who's building them, That really interests me. I'm a real big planner person, so being able to plan is definitely like a dream come true.
Jonathan,
Impressive.
yes, right? Can you share a little bit about your experience working with civil engineers, whether that be in, in your attorney life or just now, like what your experience is with civil engineers?
They're a godsend for somebody like me who doesn't have a lot of the skills needed for the building part. So a little factoid, we're actually moving our headquarters from the one that we have here in Huntington Valley to a separate one. We're 2.5 times in our space. We're building a brand new commercial kitchen, office space, racking. Like, it's a whole construction project. And that was the fourth thing that I took on once coming here. And it's been the engineers and the architects have been incredibly helpful because we have a mission, we have work that we want to do. We want to be able to feed and serve more people, but we don't know how to plan a kitchen and plan racking and plan office space and, timeline that out. And so, that skill set's going to be, you're going to be able to apply that anywhere and everywhere because people need that ability.
It's amazing. Jemiah, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel good. I mean, it's exact role I want to go into. And, being able to help other people is definitely an aspect of the job that I love.
Awesome. Awesome. That fills me up too. And let's go to Hope. Hope, it's your senior year. Share with Jonathan a little bit about what you plan to do after you graduate.
After I graduate, I want to go to college for architecture. And then after I do like my years for architecture, my aunt suggested that I should go to trade school so that I could, well, study architecture and minor. So major in architecture and minor in business, basically. She basically suggested that I should like do all that so I can make my own architecture business instead of me having to work under somebody. And I like that idea a lot because like I'm someone who doesn't really like I follow the rules, but I like when I can do something on my own time and I don't have to like wait on other people, I guess. So for me, that was like a really good idea. And like I like to achieve high. So when she told me that, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
That's
First of
awesome.
all, Jonathan, before you jump in, I want to just give a shout out to Hope's auntie. So thank you for having these conversations with Hope when you listen to this, because those conversations matter. Now, Jonathan, what encouragement or wisdom do you have to share for Hope?
That wanting to be on your own timeline and kind of that entrepreneurial sense, hold on to that, nurture that. That will inform some good decisions. I was very much the same. At the early parts of legal career, it's a lot of somebody else is telling you when things need to get done. There are deadlines and da 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 da. And sometimes you're like, hey, I have thoughts too. I think it should be this way. Hone that, develop that. It's gonna propel. But also sometimes, check in with your kitchen cabinet for all the people around you to be like, hey, this is what I think. How am I doing? Like, is this okay? And where are my holes here? But no, that sounds really exciting. After all of this, connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a contact that started their own architecture firm. I can put you guys in touch so that you can kind of have that conversation about how that's going. He's been running it for a couple years now. So yeah, I'd be happy to make that connection so you can see kind of what that looks like.
Let's go. Look at that live networking growing there. All right. Hope, how does it make you feel? And what other questions do you have for Jonathan?
It makes me feel happy because like, especially with this role, I don't really get like a lot of feedback and more so positive, like positive feedback basically. And it's just like, it makes me happy because like you're actually taking the time out of your day to help me try to pursue my dream.
Of course. That's why
I
I came
mean,
on this call. I appreciate talking about myself, but I'm, you know, like I said earlier, to the extent that you can really hear a person's story and then remember all those others that you've heard before and make those connections. Like I'm sure 10, 15 years down the road, I'll be like, I need an architect. And I'll Google up, Hope, and there you'll be. And Hope's like, oh, hey, Hope, how do I
yeah,
solve this problem?
I see it. So for our listeners, there is a giant smile on Hope's face. Let's go over to Charles. Charles, what resonated with you the most today in our conversation? For your personal invite, our guest, Jonathan.
What resonated with me was his passion to help people in need. And that comes from like, poverty or people that just need a meal. His like passion basically for community, wanting to bring people together, hoping to like make it like a bigger goal, make it like a bigger platform for people to come together, and, challenge the food insecurity.
That's good. That's good. And then Jemiah, what resonated with you the most today in this conversation with Jonathan?
I think the way that he talks resonated with me the most because it's one thing to, have a message and, have the wish to convey it. And it's another thing about the delivery, your tone and how you come across with it. I felt like he was very passionate, and the way that he articulated his words was, really compelling, and it made you want to stop and listen what he had to say.
That's amazing. I think the word is
It was-
compelling. Look at that, storyteller.
that was very kind. Thank you.
Vanessa, what resonated with you the most today in our conversation with the most amazing guest we've had? John.
You are an incredible guest. Thank you again so much, Jonathan. I just think it's really inspiring how you went through all that. I know how tough law school is and how much effort you put into that. And then you still had the confidence to make this jump to do something that was really fueling your passion, your heart, as well as your faith. So I love to hear it. I love to share this story, your story. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
All right, Jonathan, I'm going to give you one final minute. If you have any final words of encouragement or wisdom to share with our students from Tech Freire, that's including Jemiah, Charles, Hope, and Kieran, who's off screen right now.
Thank you all for having me, first off. And I think the last thing I want to leave with, and something that I probably don't hear enough, but I want to say it, that having fun and finding joy, fun and joy are a superpower. If you can, work is work. It will be hard on some days. It will stress you out. But if you can find the things that are fun, that bring you joy, that you can show up and find fun and joy, you leaps and bounds. It will be a superpower. So find fun, find joy, go after it. Makes everything else a little bit easier.
Yes, thank you for sharing your superpowers with us today. Jonathan, can you share with us what the website is for CBS Food Program?
CBSfoodprogram.org.
Well, this is Access Co-Leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all.